The most common question students ask about their own writing is, does it flow? To be frank, I'm not always sure what students mean by flow. We're not talking about plumbing after all. But most of the time, what I understand this question to be asking is, can you follow my writing? That is, as a reader, can you tell what I'm trying to communicate in the order that I'm trying to communicate it? I can tell from the pained expressions on their faces when they ask this question that students are completely unsure about what my answer will be. The question, does it flow, is a bit like the old David Letterman sketch, Will It Float?, where Letterman would drop TVs, chainsaws, and other random objects into pools of water to see what would happen. Students, uncertain about their own writing, tend to dump it on readers with their fingers crossed, hoping that somehow, magically, their writing will flow and make sense. Now, this concern is very normal because it gets at the heart of what is difficult, but also what is essential about writing. That is, how can I be sure that what I, the writer, am thinking is being accurately transmitted to you, the reader? And to be fair, it's true that I can't just read my readers' minds. I have no way of actually knowing if what I'm trying to explain is getting through to any of them. But determining whether your writing flows doesn't mean just pouring words onto the page and then crossing your fingers that the reader will follow along. In fact, there are specific signs you can give as a writer, moves you can make, words you can use, that will ensure, dare I say guarantee, that your reader can follow your ideas. Learning how to identify what these moves, words, and signs look like will help you be able to identify if they are found in your own writing, and thus help you determine on your own whether or not your writing flows. Now, this video will build off of Chapter 8 of They Say, I Say, and focus on the 4 types of signs that they discuss in that chapter. I will briefly summarize their points, but if this material remains unfamiliar or unclear to you, I suggest you go back and review that chapter. The first type of sign a writer can give to make their writing clear is transitions. Those words or phrases that indicate how the next sentence, paragraph, or section will connect to the last. For instance, if I use the word however, you instantly know as a reader that I'm going to say something different or in contrast to what came before. If I use the word furthermore, you know that I'm going to add on to what I said before. A lot of meaning can be packed into a transition. Take the word actually. If I use that one word, you know that I am both implying that something previously stated was wrong and that what I am about to tell you is correct, which is why Patton Oswalt once joked that Twitter was once slated to be named Actually. The second type of sign I can give is pointer words. You might know them better as pronouns. These words include, well, these, and that, and it, and this. Now, on their own, these pronouns are not a great way to point your reader to what you said before. It can sometimes be hard to tell what that or it is referring to. But combined with another word, these pronouns can be very useful. For instance, say I give you this sentence. This idea has not been widely accepted, and ask you to guess what came right before it. You will probably guess that there was some idea that was just explained. Just including a pointer word like this idea can signal that much. Pointer words can also be used to refer to what is about to come next in a piece of writing. If I write, Bob's argument goes something like this, you know that whatever comes next is going to be a summary of what Bob had to say. The third type of sign is repetition. That is, repeating key words over many different sentences. This principle applies especially well to topic sentences. Generally, a paragraph's topic sentence should establish the focus for the paragraph's other sentences as well. If my topic sentence went something like this, the Blue Ridge Mountains are the most beautiful in the fall, you would expect the other sentences to use words like trees, pretty, crisp, autumn, leaves, words similar to key words in the topic sentence. If instead I use words like cargo, electrical wiring, pickles, you'd probably be wondering what in the world I was talking about. Finally, the fourth principle is to repeat what you said, but with a difference. You can often signal to the reader that this is what you're about to do with a phrase like, in other words, that is, indeed. Students often hesitate to repeat themselves because they fear they will sound like a broken record. But it is easy to forget that while you already know what you want to say, your thinking is brand new to your reader, and that they need to hear your ideas a few different times for it to sink in. I often find that students move too quickly through an idea, and as a general rule, I recommend that their writing should always feel like they are repeating themselves just a little too much. If it feels slightly repetitious to the writer, then it is probably just clear enough to the reader. Now, as I said at the beginning, while you can never know exactly what is going on in your reader's head when they read your writing, you can identify whether or not these sorts of signs are found in your writing. And the more that these signs are present, the more confidence you can have that your writing flows. So what we're going to do is practice identifying these signs in some sample paragraphs. Okay, so the sample piece of writing that I've chosen for us to look at is something that is already a bit familiar. It's the opening paragraph to the script of the video that you've been watching. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to identify the types of writing signs that I use in order to make sure that I'm being clearly understood by my reader or listener. Now as I go through this, you might notice that it's a bit odd because I'm not focusing on the content of the writing. Instead, I'm focusing on the non-content words and phrases that indicate to the reader where I am moving through my ideas. Okay, it's almost like an X-ray of my writing. All right. Now I have a key down here that's going to help you know what the different types of signs look like as I identify them. If I bold a word or phrase, that means it's a transition. If I use italics, that means it's a pointer word or phrase. And then if I underline it, that means it is a key word that I am trying to repeat throughout. All right. Now, if I look at transitions first, you'll notice that I have a number here at the beginning. Generally, you want transitions at the beginning of paragraphs because you need to indicate to the reader where you are headed that is similar or different from where you have come from before this. Okay. So I start off, the most common question students ask about their own writing is, does it flow? To be frank, I'm not always sure what students mean by flow. Now that transition, to be frank, suggests I'm going to admit something that's a bit embarrassing or silly, in the sense that I don't even understand what my students are saying. We're not talking about plumbing after all, which suggests that there's something strange or odd about the way that students are using this term flow. But this but suggests now I'm going to shift my focus from receiving this question to what I think the students are actually asking. Can you follow my writing? And then I transition from that with that is. As a reader, can you tell what I'm trying to communicate in the order that I'm trying to communicate it? This transition is really key because, as I mentioned before, that is a great way to signal to your reader, okay, I'm going to restate what I just said. If you didn't get me the first time, here it comes again in a slightly different way. Okay, in other words, or indeed, is another way to signal that to your reader. Now at the end, I have this transition similarly, and that is because I wanted to make a comparison with a David Letterman sketch, will it float, to this question, does it flow? And so after I describe the sketch, I want to indicate to my reader, now I'm going to show how that is similar to the type of question that students often ask about their writing. Okay, let's look at the pointer words. Now you'll notice that there's a lot of other pronouns going on in this paragraph, and a pointer word is not just any use of a pronoun. Instead, it is a pronoun that refers back to a idea or word or phrase that was used previously in my writing. Okay, so you'll notice that the first question, or the first sentence begins, the most common question students ask about their own writing is, does it flow? And because I return back and back to this question, I use some key pointer words to bring us back to that initial sentence. For instance, I say, what I understand this question to be asking is. Or later down here, I say, I can tell from the pained expressions on their faces when they ask this question that students are completely unsure about what my answer will be. And this pointer phrase helps remind the reader about the question that I began with so that I don't have to state it over and over again, or so that they don't get confused about what it is I'm referring to. Okay, now the repetition of key words. This is where you want to make sure that you are being consistent with your topic sentence through the rest of the paragraph. So this is where you want to look at, what did I start with, and does that remain the topic or the focus of the other sentences in this paragraph? So my topic sentence is more or less, the most common question students ask about their own writing is, does it flow? So we'll notice that some of my keywords include question, students, and writing. And in some ways I have kind of a two-part topic sentence because I kind of restate and reformulate that topic sentence later down here. But most of the time, what I understand this question to be asking is, can you follow my writing? And again, we still have similar keywords: asking, question, writing. Okay? So then what I want to evaluate from here on out is how consistently do I use these terms or terms like it throughout the paragraph. And for the most part, I do. I use words like communicate, their faces, which goes back to students, as well as expressions. I have students here again. Now you might notice in this sentence, I go in a very different direction. Suddenly I'm talking about David Letterman and his sketch, Will It Float? And that might seem very jarring, and it should be somewhat jarring to the reader. But I did that intentionally, and I was confident enough that the rest of the paragraph was using the consistent key words, and that even this sentence has some crucial keywords like question, that the reader will be able to follow where I'm going with this, that there will be enough context for them to make sense that, okay, they're not going all the way out into left field, but this sketch actually participates in the rest of the paragraph. And then in this last one, I have students, readers, writing. And if we look at this holistically now, we can see that the topic of my topic sentence, question, students, and writing, carries out throughout the rest of the paragraph, so that I can be generally confident that my reader is not going to be too uncertain about where this paragraph is headed, okay? That there's enough consistency that a reader should be able to follow what I am saying. And I can also identify, too, that I use enough, or at least a few different pointer words and transitions that the way I'm moving through this paragraph should hopefully be clear enough, that they recognize that here I'm shifting focus, that here I'm going to restate what I just said, and that here I am making a comparison. Okay, for this next paragraph, you are going to practice what we just did to see how well you've gotten at identifying these different types of writing signs. What I have here is this following paragraph from the one that we just looked at. Okay, so it should be a little bit familiar. What I want you to do is go to the blog post where you found this video, open up the document entitled Flow Practice Paragraph with Microsoft Word or some other writing software, and then perform the same type of analysis on this paragraph that we did with the previous one. Okay, so bold transitions, italicize pointer words, and then underline your keywords. And if you don't have the keyboard shortcuts for doing that, you can just highlight the word that you want to identify, and then go to the B for bold, I for italics, or the U for underline. Okay. Now I've went ahead and did the first sentence for you so that you have an example, but go ahead and finish the rest of the paragraph. And then once you are done, come back, finish the video, and you can see how you did. Okay, let's see how you did. Now, it's likely that we have some discrepancies between our different paragraphs, and that's fine. The point is not to get at some exact right answer, because there isn't some exact right answer. It's just to make sure that you are confident in being able to identify for yourself whether you can see the different moves a writer needs to make in order to make sure that they are being clear to their reader. Okay, so let's talk about transitions first of all. You'll notice, as in the previous paragraph, that my transitions tend to be bunched towards the beginning. And again, that is important so that you can indicate where you have come from and where you are going in this new paragraph. The transitions I use, like now and to be fair, suggest that I start off by admitting why some people might be right or why I might be wrong. And then the but suggests a shift in focus where I want to emphasize, re-emphasize the point that I'm trying to make. So in this case, I want to admit that, yes, knowing whether or not your writing is flows or not is a real important concern that people have, and it really gets at the heart of what writing is. But what I want to say is that you can actually do specific things in your writing to make sure that it flows, and you don't just have to guess whether or not it does. All right, so that's the transitions. Those are the signals that my transitions are trying to make. I then try to emphasize that by saying, in fact, And then by the end of the paragraph, when I'm arriving at my conclusions and analysis, I use the transition thus to kind of wrap things up. And again, that's the kind of structure you want in your paragraphs, from topic sentence to evidence and examples to analysis and conclusion. And your transitions can help emphasize to your reader how you are moving through those different parts of a paragraph. Okay, now let's look at the pointer words. Generally, you will want to have some type of pointer word or phrase in the first sentence or so of your paragraph, because it helps point the reader back to an idea that was mentioned before and indicate how you are moving from that or talking about that in a different way. So in this example, my pointer word here is this concern, which refers to the previous paragraph, students' concern about whether or not their writing flows. And this pointer word allows me to indicate how I'm going to be talking about this concern in a different way. All right. I don't really use pointer words again until about halfway through the paragraph, where I start to introduce this idea of writing signs. And then I use a few different words and pointer words to gesture back to this concept so that the reader can remember what it is that we're talking about. In this case, I use words like moves, words, and then these moves, words, and signs. Now, it's likely that you did not italicize the words moves and words because these are not pronouns. And I suggested before that pointer words tend to be pronouns, which again are words like it, this, that, he, she, and so forth. But what I think these words do here is that they repeat with a slight difference a key concept that came before, and so that they do the same effect of reminding the reader of the concept that is being discussed here, okay? So that it can help us remember that when we use moves, words, and signs, that we're generally using them in the same way. All right, and finally, the key words. Now, this is probably where we have the most difference between our two paragraphs, because there's no hard and fast rule of identifying what counts as the key word of a sentence and what doesn't, okay? The point is just to identify enough of the important words of the sentence and paragraph so that then you can compare them with each other and say, is there enough resemblance between them? Are we talking about the same general idea, the same general topic, or am I jumping around all over the place, okay? So I started off talking about ideas like concern, writing, difficult, and this tends to carry on through the other sentences. I have words like knowing, thinking, transmitted, reader's mind, determining. All these words, while not identical to what I started off with, have enough family resemblances, are similar enough that I can expect that my reader is going to be able to follow along. Now, halfway through the paragraph, I shift gears a little bit, where I start to talk about different writing signs. And so my key words start to shift as well. And that's fine. You can have this shift in your paragraph as long as you are consistent with that shift. So as long as what comes after the shift is pretty similar with themselves compared to what came before. So after I start talking about signs, I use words like moves, words, ideas, and then again, moves, words, and signs, writing. Again, these words are similar enough that I can expect, even though I've changed focus slightly in this paragraph, my reader is going to be able to follow along with what I'm trying to say. And again, this is what all these different types of signs are meant to get at, are just to help you identify, am I communicating clearly with my reader? Even though I can't read their mind as they read my writing, I can look at my own writing and say, do I have transitions? What do these transitions say? Do they accurately communicate how my ideas are developing? Do I have pointer words? Am I referring back to previous ideas so that the reader doesn't get lost about what we are talking about? And then finally, do I use enough similar key words that a reader can follow along with my general set of ideas and not feel like I'm jumping around from one topic to the next? Putting all these things together, looking at them holistically, can help you determine whether or not your writing flows, okay? And even though, again, you can't read your reader's mind, if you can identify in your own writing how well you are using these transitions, pointer words, and keywords, you will be able to know more confidently whether or not your writing is clear. All right?